Um, so in general, we can say that when an event has a high um ethical issue intensity, then organizations, in terms of their intention on how to address those ethical issues, will be highly influenced. But an ethical issue, an event that has an ethical issue intensity that is low, will not influence the company to have certain intentions, or what or to what extent they intend to do something about the ethical issue. The second factor is individual factors. They can be grouped into individual factors. um, and individual factors, well, it relates to the individuals that are involved in the decision making. So first is gender. In ethical decision making, researchers show that in many aspects there are no differences between men and women in terms of um, their ethical issue intent, and in terms of the organization's intention to act on an ethical issue. Okay, so gender has no bearing, generally, okay, based on research. Second is education. It says here that education is a significant factor in the ethical decision making process. Generally, the more education or work experience people have, the better they are at making ethical decisions. And in terms of education, it is not with regards to fields. Okay, different fields generally do not have any significant difference in terms of how the fields influence the intention of organizations to address ethical issues, but rather the extent, the level of education, the level of work experience may have than influence. So the more education, the more work experience people have, the better they are at making ethical decisions. And then nationality. Okay, so nationality may have some bearing as well. And then age, an individual factor that has a complex relationship with business ethics. It is usually um, perceived, it was originally anticipated that people of higher age are more ethical sensitive. Okay, um, they are more likely to have ethical intentions when they make decisions based on their age. However, it was found in some studies that young managers are far more influenced by by um, by organizational culture, and they are the ones that are more prone to look at things in the ethical sense. Other individual factors include locus of control. So locus of control is the individual differences in relation to a generalized belief about how one is affected by internal versus external events or in reinforcements. Okay. Um, so how does one person, what influences a person to make to have ethical intentions or ethical um, decisions? um, we can generally split into external control and internal control. Um, so in external control, individuals see themselves as going with the flow. Okay, they are more conformance type of people. They follow what other people say. They do according to instructions or rules, but it is not within themselves that drive them um, to perform decisions. So they just follow the flow. Okay, so their philosophy or their point of view of life is that life events are due to uncontrollable forces that they just succumb to. They just follow whatever happens, and they just leave it to, basically it's like letting it to go by chance. Okay, they just follow whatever happens, and yeah they succumb to it. But internal control, people who have a locus of control in the form of internal control, believe that they control the events in their lives by their own effort and their own skill. They view themselves as master of their destinies and trust in their capacity to influence their environment. So people that have this locus of control uh, in the form of internal control, they have the understanding, the perception that everything is up to their own effort, everything is up to their own um, yeah, their own skills. What happens to them is their own doing. Okay, so because of the differences in the external control and internal control, it will influence how uh, organizations will intend the way they intend to address ethical issues. The third main factor that influences the intention of organizations to address ethical issues is organizational factors. And organizational factors can be broken up into corporate culture, ethical culture, significant others, obedience to authority. Corporate culture is a set of values, norms, and artifacts, including ways of solving problems that members or employees of an organizations share. And that is also can be seen in the organization's mission statements and objectives. Okay, so more an organization that has a strong set of values, norms, and artifacts, um, then they would have the their intention to address ethical issues will be higher, whereas those organizations that have a weak culture, they don't have a set of values, norms, then their intention to address ethical issues will be lower. And then the ethical culture. Um, so ethical culture is the acceptable behavior defined by the company and industry. It reflects the integrity of decisions made, and it's a function of factors including corporate policies, top management's leadership on ethical issues, the influence of co-workers, and the opportunity for unethical behavior. So generally, organizations with strong ethical culture will of course have higher levels of intention in addressing ethical issues, whereas those with lower ethical culture will not have that. And then the next factor within the organizational factors is significant others, those who have influence in a work group, including peers, managers, co-workers, and subordinates. Okay, those there are people who are involved in the ethical decision making, but they are influenced by other people who may not be involved in that particular decision, but will have a bearing on the person making the decision. So they call these unrelated people, irrelevant people, but as significant others. Even though they are irrelevant to the decision making, they are not part of the decision making people, but somehow their opinion, conduct is has influence on the person, on the people making the decision. And then obedience to authority. Um, A reason employees resolve business ethics issues by simply following the directives of a superiority. So the level of obedience to authority also affects the intention to address ethical issues. It can be complex in terms of obedience to authority. So when the authority in the organization are those that um, have strong ethical sense, then employees who do not have a strong ethical sense will just follow the directive of their authority, and therefore the organization will have a strong intention to address ethical issues. Um, however, however, if their authority lacks ethical considerations, then the employee that is predominantly obedient to authority will follow suit, even though their own self, they don't believe in their ethical consideration. They have a different ethical stance, but because they are very obedient to their authority, they will follow the instructions of the authority, even though it goes against the employee's ethical sense. Uh, so it is quite complex.